7 other recruiters laughed at me. One recruiter finally said, "Come on in, I'm too busy to talk to you on the phone." He didn't know how much I weighed. I walked in the recruiter's office and he looked at me and he said, "You're fat and you're black." I said, "I want to be a Navy SEAL." I didn't know there had only been 35 African-American Navy SEALs at that time in over 70 years. He said I basically had to lose 106 pounds in less than 3 months because of my age. I was getting too old. I came back 3 months later, 106 pounds lighter.
They laughed first, not because he was weak, but because he was different, because he spoke dreams that sounded impossible, because he didn't look the part, because he didn't fit the image of who they thought deserved respect. And laughter is the weapon insecure people use when they don't understand what they're seeing. It's easier to mock than to admit fear, easier to joke than to confront potential. At the beginning, he talked, he explained, he tried to be understood, and that was the mistake. Because the world doesn't reward explanations, it rewards outcomes. The moment you start explaining your vision to people who've never sacrificed for one, you give them power they didn't earn. David Goggins learned that the hard way, not through motivation, but through humiliation, rejection, and pain. There comes a moment when something clicks, when you realize words are cheap, when you understand that the same people laughing now will never clap for effort, only for results. That's when you stop talking, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You don't need approval when you're building proof. Silence becomes strategy. When you stop talking, you start working. When you stop explaining, you start executing. And that shift changes everything. You become dangerous because now your energy isn't leaking. No more convincing, no more defending, no more justifying. Every ounce of focus goes into discipline, into repetition, into becoming undeniable. People underestimate silence. They think it means weakness. In reality, silence is pressure building. It's restraint. It's confidence that doesn't need validation. The strongest people in the room are rarely the loudest. They're the ones absorbing hits, stacking wins quietly, and letting time do the talking. This is where the story always changes, not when you get louder, not when you prove your point verbally, but when results arrive without warning, when the laughter fades into confusion, when silence turns into respect. They laughed because they saw who you were. They stop laughing when they see who you became. At first, laughter feels harmless. Jokes, teasing, just messing around. That's how disrespect enters quietly. People test boundaries when they sense hesitation. They push when they think there will be no consequences. Bullies don't look for the weakest person. They look for the one who won't respond. And for a long time, silence can look like permission. But there is a moment when silence changes meaning. In this scene, everything shifts not because of words, but because of presence. No speech, no warning, just a line drawn. Reacher doesn't explain himself. He doesn't negotiate respect. He simply removes the illusion that he can be treated lightly. That's what most people never learn. Respect is not requested. It is enforced through action and consistency. The mistake many people make is thinking strength needs an announcement. It doesn't. Real strength moves quietly until it has to act. When you stop talking and start carrying yourself differently, the environment responds. Your posture changes. Your eyes change. Your patience shortens. You're no longer reacting emotionally. You're responding deliberately. People laugh when they believe there are no consequences. The moment consequences appear, the tone changes. Mockery turns into caution. Arrogance turns into hesitation. Not because you became louder, but because you became solid, predictable in discipline, unpredictable in response. Most people want to be respected without becoming formidable. They want boundaries without backbone. That doesn't work. A world that tests everyone will always exploit those who never push back. Silence alone is not strength. Silence paired with capability is. This is the turning point in every underestimated person's story. When they stop trying to fit in, when they stop absorbing disrespect, when they stop explaining why they deserve better treatment. Instead, they upgrade themselves, physically, mentally, strategically. And suddenly, the same people who laughed start watching their words. Not because they like you, but because they understand you're no longer safe to play with. Laughter fades when weakness disappears, and once that happens, respect arrives without conversation.
Move. This one goes here, that one goes there, and then comes this side, this one goes. Sorry. Here, let me help you.
You're a freak. You know that? I've had to watch you play with these for weeks. Are you crazy? No? What if you had an extra one? Why don't you cut this little act and do something? Why don't you stop me, huh?
There's a moment every underestimated person reaches where they stop needing closure. They don't need apologies. They don't need acknowledgement. They don't need the people who laughed to suddenly understand. Because by then, something more powerful has happened. The gap has formed. A gap in discipline. A gap in growth. A gap so wide that explanations become unnecessary. This is where silence transforms into revenge. Not loud revenge. Not emotional revenge. But the kind that hurts the most. Success without recognition. Strength without announcement. Progress without permission. The people who once laughed now struggle to recognize the version of you standing in front of them. And that confusion is the real consequence. Most people fantasize about proving others wrong verbally, arguing, confronting, rewriting the past. But the strongest response has always been evolution. When you outgrow the room, the laughter dies on its own. When your discipline compounds, mockery loses relevance. When your results arrive, history gets rewritten quietly. This is why those clips hit so hard, not because of violence, but because of reversal. The power dynamic flips. The people who felt untouchable are suddenly exposed, and the ones who were dismissed no longer need to speak. Their presence alone changes the tone. That's what happens when work replaces words. Silence with no progress is invisibility. Silence with progress is intimidation. At this stage, you're no longer trying to be understood. You're no longer reacting to disrespect. You've moved past the emotional need for validation. Your focus is narrow. Your standards are high. Your tolerance for nonsense is gone. And people feel that shift before you ever say a word. This is the part no one warns you about. Once you level up, some people won't clap. They'll distance themselves. Not because you did something wrong, but because your growth reminds them of what they avoided. And that's fine. Silence doesn't need an audience. They laughed because they thought you'd stay the same. They stopped laughing when you didn't. And by the time they want to talk again, you're already living in a different lane. At the end of every story like this, there is no speech, no victory lap, no explanation, because the strongest people don't circle back to prove anything. They move forward and let the distance speak for them. By the time the laughter stops, the silence is already too loud to ignore. He didn't win by arguing. He didn't win by defending himself. He didn't win by demanding respect. He won by disappearing into the work. While others kept talking, he kept building. While others stayed the same, he evolved. While others laughed, he paid the price in discipline, in sacrifice, in solitude. And that price changed him. It sharpened him. It made him someone the world could no longer treat lightly. This is the truth most people miss. Respect doesn't arrive when you ask for it. It arrives when your growth makes disrespect impossible, when your presence carries weight, when your discipline shows up before you do, when your silence signals confidence, not fear. At some point, you stop needing the last word. You stop replaying old moments. You stop caring who doubted you, because your life has moved on, and they're still stuck remembering who you used to be. That's the real separation. Not success, but elevation. They laughed because they thought that was the end of the story. They were wrong. The story didn't end when you were mocked. It began when you stopped responding. And the most powerful thing you can ever do to people who doubted you is live so far beyond them that your silence becomes the answer.